Good afternoon, citizens. Welcome to this week's edition of the Citizens Chat Show. I'm your host, Sarah Bireete, stepping in for Masesa Damien. And with me in the studios, I have from the extreme left is Mr. Awich Pollar, a retired Major of the UPDF. You're welcome to the chat show, Awich.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Greetings to my colleagues.
Yes, Council Ivan Bwowe.
Hello, everyone.
I think this is your third appearance on the chat show.
Yes.
You're welcome to this week's chat show. And Joseph Ochieno, who has had taken off some leave to Nagongela, and he will share with us updates.
I was fantastically dancing, and congratulations to you, Dr. Bireete. It's a privilege to be next to you.
Thank you. And in this edition, we shall be discussing the recent political and economic developments in Uganda. Just to run through the key events, we have the country still discussing the Coffee Vinci agreement. We still have on table the Bwowe Hospital, rising commodity prices, Uganda-Rwanda bilateral relations, and the cattle rustling in Karamoja, and the Mozambique question. As of yesterday, the president of Mozambique jetted into the country with the first lady, and starting with you, Awich, what do you make of the Uganda-Mozambique relations, and what was the purpose of that visit?
Well, Mozambique and Uganda are two sovereign states, very prominent in the African Union membership and UN, therefore. They both have governments who have promised to move along revolutionary path. But more importantly is that the history of NRM has its genesis from Mozambique, in that our first lot of cadres were trained in Mozambique. And therefore, we have that rooting with them. And part of the coming here of the head of state was also to see, for historical sharing, past experiences where we did a similar revolutionary struggle. But also, I like to point out that Mozambique was a frontline state during the liberation of South Africa. Uganda was far, but in effect, we were a member of the frontline states also. Because there was a time when the South African government, the white regime, had threatened to bomb all the South African Southern African frontline states, and they had to run with the liberation fighters from South Africa to Uganda. Pan-African Movement, African National Congress, we kept them in Oliver Tambo Training School. We actually started Oliver Tambo Training School because of them. Majority of this bulk were relocated from Mozambique. And we trained them, kept them, they went back, and the liberation of South Africa was attained. So Mozambique has a lot of contact with Uganda, and I think with due course, economic relationship will also be developed in as far as how the two countries can benefit economically. They're a strong member of SADC, and they have a lot of activities there as well. So the history of Mozambique, the history of Uganda and Mozambique quite intertwines well, and I think it is right and fitting that the president visits here, and that is part of the whole equation of the president being here.
What's your take on the relations between the two countries?
Well, as he has said, the two are sovereign states. And so it's important that we have an ongoing conversation. However, I want to analyze the visit in view of Uganda's foreign policy, if any. Uganda is quite an interesting country. I am leading to that. That's why I said foreign policy, if any.
Okay.
So you realize that we do not have a standard foreign policy. And Mozambique, in particular, has some other elements that he is not talking about. My colleague is not talking about that we should know as Ugandans. It has oil, and at the moment, there are actually insurgencies in Mozambique over that. The country in itself is not stable politically. That is Mozambique. We have peacekeeping mission from our neighbors, Rwanda, in Mozambique. Just like, so I want to look at the visit of the president of Mozambique vis-a-vis Uganda's relations with Rwanda, and vis-a-vis the private visit of President Kagame to Uganda, and extend it to the other offer that Uganda is going to offer, protection, whatsoever they wanted to term it. And I think the idea that Uganda exports mercenaries is very dangerous, clothed in bilateral relations. I think it would be better in Uganda as a country to host a head of state, and we say, what, in terms of trade, actual trade, what can we export? What can you export? What tariff barriers can we demolish so that there is actual commerce? So when you talk about the visit of the president, which is glamorous, and I want to say to state that it's a state visit. So we, the taxpayers, are literally footing the bill for his visit here in Uganda.
But even if it was private, still the taxpayer fits the bill of State House.
We fit the bill. We fit the bill. So to me, we've been short-circuited in a way that we are spending on a visit, but there is nothing much in return tangible, but only to hear that we are going to send the UPDF to Mozambique to keep particular installations. And I think we should worry about those occurrences vis-a-vis the impending oil exploration in Uganda.
Two questions, boy, before I let you off the hook. One is that there are insurgents in Mozambique who are fighting in the North State.
Yes.
To declare Mozambique an Islamic state. They've pronounced allegiance to the Islamic organization. They call themselves Al-Shabaab, but we know there are no links with the Al-Shabaab in Somalia, as per the media reports at least. So wouldn't it be prudent for the African Union member states to intervene and protect the territorial integrity of Mozambique? And secondly, the question that is disturbing when I saw the pronouncement yesterday in the media that President Museveni is ready to deploy UPDF. As much as it's prudent to do so, why does he always bypass the constitutional mechanisms of deploying foreign troops abroad?
One, I think it is the African Union has a duty to make sure that we do not have extremist-related insurgencies. And we have to understand that the discussion was not about the role of AU. The discussion of the visit was about President Museveni's willingness to deploy the UPDF. And this is not the first time this is happening. Congo recently.
We are in Equatorial Guinea.
We are in Equatorial Guinea.
The president and his family.
And you know,
are you sure?
Yes.
You know, there is a lot. There is quite a lot of misuse of the national army in favor of whatsoever President Museveni wishes. And to me, that is very dangerous, because even the pronouncement that is willing to deploy without discussion from the August House is problematic. But we have precedents where he has actually deployed the UPDF without even seeking permission. I can mention examples. Talk of Sudan, talk of the initial
He has
Somalia.
never thought UPDF prior. Even when they
Yes.
actually, on the DRC, they refused to even report to Parliament after illegal deployment, bypassing Parliament.
So it's and then he called caucus to give him money.
Let me bring in Joseph at this point. Joseph, what's your take on this presidential or state visit of the Mozambique president?
It's a waste of public resources. It's a show. It's an extremely unfortunate setback for me, whose party was the initiator. I know NRA likes to present African history and Ugandan history to start from 1986. That the relationship with actually Southern African liberation, and I thought my good brother Awich today would be generous to refer to the fact that the liberation struggle started with UPC, and in fact, Mr. Museveni went to Frelimo camps, courtesy of UPC's presence and relationships with Tanzania, Nyerere, and indeed Mozambique at the time. I really wish and hope that this is presented, but it's not a political point. It's put in the context, that historical link, meaning that if it were actually presented well, Ugandans would say very genuinely that they are net contributors to the liberation struggles in Southern Africa, including Mozambique. But that said, Mr. Museveni developed some interesting relationship with Frelimo, leading to the 1979 Liberation War, Comrade Awich. It was only Mozambique that agreed with Museveni that elections should not take place in Uganda in 1980, meaning that they were the least likely supporters of return to multipartyism in the name of the alleged revolutionary politics. But while revolutionary politics could be qualified in Mozambique, you know my views, it's not necessarily revolutionary in Uganda, because NRA is not necessarily a revolutionary organization. But that said, the relationship by and large sticks there. So it's possibly not surprising that when things get rather harder in Mozambique, the Mozambicans find it rather convenient, because only in Uganda, where they can come and make a presentation like that, not in Tanzania, by the way, not the original Tanzania, can they make the presentation that they're making, but except in Uganda. And the reason is simply because in Uganda we have a rent and army policy. Now, the rent and army policy did not really start with the DRC. The rent and army policy started with Rwanda. The October 1990 invasion of Rwanda was basically using Uganda's resources to go and push for an agenda for which Ugandans have really to date not benefited. And one of the big issues for me with Mr. Kagame is that I wait for a time when there will be an official Rwandese policy, and to say that thank you, the people of Uganda, for looking after us. Thank you, the people of Uganda, for helping us to claim back our country. I am tying the context of all this to link with what Ivan is saying, that you see the polity which puts Mozambique, puts Uganda, puts Rwanda, and then you see not nation states benefiting out of this, but individual leaders playing the citizenry of those three countries, but using nothing else but, in this case, military might and exploitation. My concern with Mozambique, and I say so as a friend of Mozambique, and as a friend of leading Mozambican diplomats, leading to the conclusion of my exile, that I was rather disappointed in the last few years that the democratization process of Mozambique, and I thought I was going to mention that, let me play hard on it, is it went on the slower end. I'm not saying it's a justification of the insurgency, but Mozambique, which was rather very promising, all of a sudden took the line of Mr. Museveni by being harsh on the Mozambican opposition. Of course, not the other guys that Alfonso de Clama's extreme right-wing political organization with whom I don't agree. But generally, once Mozambique liberalized, the ruling party started to see themselves as the owners of oil, the owners of Mozambican wealth, and the owners of power and if you like, governance in Mozambique. Not really different from what Museveni and others have done. The new Mozambican president thought would possibly change. There is seemingly no evidence has changed. I don't know him as well as I did know some of the previous leaders 10, 15 years ago. But I hope that maybe, as you rightly suggest, that as things get slightly much more complicated, maybe the African Union will, when they come in, ideally, they may help to begin to retabulate the conversation on Mozambique. Because it should not really be a bilateral issue between Mozambique and Rwanda and Uganda. It will simply not be sustainable.
Well, I think you have some rebuttal to make, but briefly as you rebut on some of the comments by your co-panelists, I want to have your brief take on the status of the Uganda-Rwanda relations, because I have it from very good sources that goods, whereas the border seems to be open, goods from Rwanda are not crossing into Uganda, and goods from Uganda are not crossing into Rwanda. And where does this leave the Common Markets Protocol under the East African integration process?
You said I make a comment on the.
If you wish.
On the
You might have no
really
That was very
don't
generous.
need to be- all I'm still saying is that I'm a director at the party, of the party in the ruling party. And I want to strengthen by saying that the ideological genesis, the birth of NRM is linked, the umbilical cord of the birth is linked to Mozambique. And if it grows to the extent where that party is voted by the people to be in power as it is now with this current mandate, I find it right and fitting to link the country with Mozambique. And that's what is happening. The details of working out the economic benefits, their benefits, whether bilateral in terms of security, that detail can be worked out. And if it is worked out and it is not good for the country, it can be discussed. But as a principle, I'm okay with it. Now, coming to the Rwanda-Uganda relationship, I am one person who has always said that Uganda and Rwanda is one, and I did not see any need for hostility. And it is on record that me, as Awich, I have contributed so much for the relationship between Uganda and Rwanda. I happen to have been a chairman of Ntare School All Boys, where both President Museveni and Kagame went. After the Kisangani fighting in Rwanda, the two senior All Boys had not seen themselves for months, and they have not talked. I came up with an idea that we should play football. My fellow Old Boys said, "What are you talking about? These guys have just fought in the Congo. Who will come for your football?" I wrote a letter to President Kagame and wrote one to President Museveni. I served the two letters. I served that of Kagame in Kitante here at the embassy, and another one there in the State House. They both responded at the same time. They said, Kagame replied saying, "I'm a goalkeeper, I don't need uniform. I will come with my uniform." Museveni said, "I'm number 9, bring me uniform for inspection." I took it. I put them in one team against the school administration, not the school children, because the children are young. Yes, the cooks.
You guys use children
the
anyway.
Cooks. Yeah, because the children are young, they can't play with these mature people. So I put the
But
cooks,
you
the
fought
teachers.
alongside
You-
Lucifer
you-
as a
teachers
child.
and
You had
Which
children.
You were
So-
a child soldier.
So we played the game. The President Museveni and President Kagame were in one team. The captain of that team was Stephen Akaboy, who had been Electoral Commission chairman, and OB. The referee was the late principal judge,
Mtagoba.
yes, because we believed he was an OB and a principal judge, so it would be fair. We played. Informally, we ended.
One.
It was draw between the staff and the OBs. Now,
maybe that was
the
an omen.
hostility ended. Now, what we did as all boys was to save the country from the formality of peace talks. You know, when two states start
Did
to
the
talk.
match last 90 minutes?
Yes, it did. It always lasts, but we can substitute. No, it lasted only that Sarah is inferring that some players were substituted. But the match lasted.
We doubt
And
that.
President Kagame played all the 90 minutes. The importance of this.
So the viewers,
Was Mr.
the viewers know who didn't
The importance of this activity is that when two states, and we have seen it, when two states are quarreling, do you know how much money it costs? It starts from the lowest. The commissioners from the two states meet, whether in Munyonyo or what. Then the directors of the two states meet. Then the permanent secretaries of the two states meet. Then the ministers of foreign affairs meet. By the time it reaches the president, taxpayers' money were used.
You are forgetting
now,
the
for
grass,
me,
the grass that are suffering.
yes.
And
For
that is
me,
Sarah's
I did
frustration.
it
That's
in
the
a,
biggest cost.
I did it in a near football game.
So
When I
what- so
did it
what's-
in a
what's the
football
problem
game.
then? What's the
So
problem?
now, after that, we decided to visit Rwanda for a dinner. I went to dinner in Serena with President Museveni with all boys, 6 buses of all boys. Why were we in dinner in Serena? We were in dinner because we had decided to build another entire school in Rwanda in memory. So we went for a fundraising, which we did, and the school was built. So in other words, I'm saying, right from my position of saying these are two people in one, I do not see any need for hostility. I do not see why. I don't envisage Rwanda wanting an inch in Uganda, Uganda wanting an inch in Rwanda. These conflicts, I have never believed in it, and that's why I'm saying, personally, as I wish, I have done it. I made the football, we went for dinner, relationship was fine. Whatever came after that, I don't know, but that is my contribution, and God knows it. So, if now Kagame comes and we reclaim our relationship, be it. So what I therefore call upon whoever would host or benefit from a conflict to desist from it. The two people are one. Nobody benefits from Kaviu. Nobody benefits from. A few of them may benefit from some kind of fund that they get, but that is not in the best interest of an ordinary person in Rwanda, an ordinary person in Uganda. So if this is normalizing, I'm very grateful. And
Well said.
NRM is very grateful.
Well said, Awich. Ivan, why do we have the on and off love that doesn't seem to last beyond 5 years? Because these quarrels have been part of the defining factors between the two leaders across the countries.
I think one thing that cuts out when I analyze this situation is the issue of respect. When you're in a home and you're the mother or the father or you're a brother, at some point you must acknowledge that the power relations can never be consistent as time goes on.
But these are sovereign states.
I am driving a very important point about respect that should cut across mutual respect that should cut across sovereign states, which at times tends to not be there. When a state complains over no currency, when you sweep it under the carpet, you're not building peace. You just you just resuscitating that conflict. When you see what happened in Sangani, very terrible, very terrible. And I want to say that whereas you provided an interim, I don't think you in law you dealt with an interim. You never dealt with a temporary, and therefore you never disposed of the matter, the main suit. Because if there is a conflict that has arose and it was this terrible, then that means probably the match did not solve things. Perhaps you would have left the other player in to finish the 90 minutes. So what in short terms, what I'm saying is that this is an issue of respect and ego.
Which ends up affecting millions of Ugandans.
Millions of Ugandans and millions of
Rwandese.
Rwandans.
Rwandans,
Yeah.
they love to be called. Joe, why is it that this love between the two countries never seems to last? And what do we need to do? Or do we have a love and hate relationship?
It's very unfortunate, actually, as I said, because historically, from 1959, Uganda has been very much at the center of helping to rescue Rwanda at difficult times. And in many ways, Banyarwanda can argue that they've made a net contribution to this country. Unfortunately, this is not a matter between the two personalities, rather two identities, or indeed two communities. In a way, it's a question of ego. But I don't actually even know whether it's an issue of brethren, where the mutual respect would come in. I think this is a problem that emerged out of NRA, where NRA broke into RPF, and maybe if you had some of these conversations much more openly and honestly, it might help. And while I possibly might want to blame Kagame a bit, I think to Kagame's credit, he grew up as a big boy, went off to Rwanda, did his bit. It would appear as if the responsibility lies with Mr. Museveni to recognize that the young man moved on, went and built a bit of his Simba, started life, and is actually doing rather well in terms of his version and vision of Rwanda relative to Mr. Museveni's Uganda. So whether or not we can...
But why do you give him credit? Why is it that Kagame can't respect elders?
No, because Rwanda is a sovereign state. And maybe actually when he looks back, Sarah, that's a very important point. Maybe when he looks back to Uganda, he can't believe that the Uganda that nurtured and built him. He's so incompetent in many ways that if you go to Kigali and come back, you realize that there's a huge difference between Kigali and Kampala, and you get annoyed. In fact, I had a case recently, I think about a month ago, where friends of mine who came from Rwanda talk about that you just crossed Katuna, and then you realize that you're not only in a different country, but you belong to a certain nation.
I was there earlier this month, and I reduced it to one conclusion, and which I posted on my social media platforms, that there is a heavy cost to poor leadership.
Oh, leadership is everything.
Yeah, but Sarah, you've always said this, if you don't mind pushing it back to you. You have actually been very
I'm a moderator. I'm not on the hot seat.
The Sarah on the hot seat has severally reminded us that unless and until these two gentlemen retire to their farms, the citizens of these two nation states will continue to struggle, to suffer. Now, whether it is ego, it is this thing about symbiotic relationship and brotherhood, and that do not work, is neither here nor there. But yes, to an extent, there is this power thing, there is ego, and I think these two guys, maybe they need to go to church this coming Sunday and learn to forgive. Because if you forgive, you release. Of course.
Ladies and gentlemen out there, we are diving into the local politics now, and just a few days ago, the NRM caucus convened, the NRM parliamentary caucus. NRM controls majority in our parliament, and when they take a decision, normally it translates into a decision that will result from the floor of the House. The caucus discussed 3 key issues. One was an update on the security situation in Karamoja from the president. The second issue was the coffee deal. And the third issue was commodity prices. On the decision of the coffee deal, the NRM caucus agreed to review the MOU between Uganda, Vinci Coffee, and the government of Uganda. But on the issue of commodity prices, the caucus took a decision of let's do nothing. And ladies and gentlemen, that concerns your life. We know the cost of soap, the cost of cooking oil, the cost of fuel. Diesel has shot up above petrol costs on the fuel tanks as per yesterday. And we know the cost of posho, a bag has risen by 30,000 in Chikubo. So what does this mean for a local citizen? Awich, is this a signed and sealed, done and dusted deal that you will do nothing about the welfare of Ugandans?
I will restrict myself to that question, but because the bulk of your paraphrasing about the caucus, I'm not
Tell
so
us what happened. You were there.
I'm not so sure. That's what I'm coming to. I'm not so sure whether, I mean, to what degree should I discuss caucus, whether it is left to the spokesperson to release what happened. But I like to say that when I was here last Thursday, the issue of coffee came up. And I said, I'm not going to answer anything now. Since you people have raised the contentious provisions in the agreement, and we are going to have it discussed in the caucus. And it would be shameful if I came back today and caucus never discussed. But I'm glad and proud to say, today as I'm talking, you have said caucus discussed. It did discuss. And I think you'd thank me for that because I tell the truth. And that is what the movement says, always. Because if I am here on a Thursday, when was the caucus? Today is Thursday.
It was on Tuesday?
Tuesday. Now, we were here on a Thursday. And I promise, Friday came, Saturday came, Sunday came, Monday came, Tuesday it was discussed. So I thought you'd say, yes, that is the kind of cadre we want.
So you pushed.
So it was discussed, and very frankly, because the members were very, very firm on their ground, pointing out provisions that they didn't agree with. And as you said, that is what came out of that discussion. So
is the MOU withdrawn or it's still on table?
It is what it is, but it's being discussed. The provisions that the president accepted will be discussed. So it will be discussed.
Is that a word that Ugandans can take to the bank, or it can change somewhere?
The discussion will...
because we've been discussing even before caucus. So what does that to discuss mean?
What do you mean?
For the benefit of viewers, you said the MOU will be discussed. Can you simplify it?
No, what I'm saying here is that members raise concern in provisions. You know, an agreement is a contract between two people, between two parties. So the caucus observed that we are not happy with this provision, that provision, that provision. So the president didn't say it is hard and frozen and finished. No. Compared, for example, to what you said about the commodity.
Yes.
The commodity position was different from the coffee agreement.
Of do nothing.
Yeah, the commodity... now, first of all, I was still waiting for you to thank me.
No, I'm going to thank after a submission.
Yeah.
But why?
That was the provision.
But why should we thank you for doing what you're supposed to do?
And
because I've done it. Because I've done it.
You do what you're supposed to do, and others do nothing, and we thank you.
Yes. So that was the position, and which I promised the other time, and it was done. And for the avoidance of doubt, I sat in a caucus in my capacity as a director at the Secretariat. Caucus is an organ of the party under the party constitution. Just like you have an organ like League for Disability, League for Youth, and all that. So under the party constitution, the parliamentary caucus is an organ of the party. So that is why I sit there, because I'm a director, another party official. So I'm privy to that. But as you said, it was discussed. Now the other thing
Karamoja.
on the commodity. Commodity,
we
the
shall
chairman,
come to the commodity on the second session. First, coffee deal and Karamoja, then we come back to the commodities, because that's
so
an
I
elaborate
believe I've
discussion.
answered on the coffee
Thank
deal.
you.
Now on the Karamoja was, remember, the caucus and the motion that was being discussed was a motion from the chairman. Okay? It's the chairman who was raising it, and he's the one who summoned. So he explained the position of Karamoja, which I think is not anything confidential. He explained the genesis, and he explained what the government is doing now. And we appear to be convinced. In summary, therefore, the insecurity in Karamoja and the neighbors is not good for the country. The government is doing everything possible. In particular, he calls it combined arms. I am a soldier, so I know what it is. Is deploying combined arms to make sure that security in Karamoja is handled. Actually, he said he wants the Karamoja cattle rustlers to know that a gun is not a good thing to hold. And I believe that would achieve that. So the Karamoja insecurity is not good for the people inter-Karamoja, intra-communities, and also for the neighbors. And it is only in the best interest of the country that that region is peaceful, and the peace that is there will be benefited from by everybody in the country. So that is what it's about Karamoja. We hope to see it stabilized soon.
Okay, before
my
I come
congressman will say he want to say something, but Congress failed.
Before I let you off the hook, Afande, if you can briefly explain to the viewers out there, what are the short-term, medium-term, and long-term interventions in the quest to stabilize Karamoja?
The long-term intervention has always been that Karamoja needs to be put in the productive areas like water. When water is not there, people tend to move for areas of water, and they affect the neighboring communities. That is the long run. So the long run has been to provide water and actually turn it into cultivation areas, which is an ongoing effort. Also, what I could actually call a long term is even the gunpowder question. The gunpowder question was introduced when the Karamojong got guns from Amin's armory when the Amin soldiers left. And the whole east and north of it has seen proliferation of arms from Sudan, from Kenya. So that one, to me, I don't even take it a short term because it is really so inbuilt there. So the long term also is not to make arms. The gunpowder question should be removed so that the citizens, people who own guns, should be the state apparatus and the legitimate people. Of course, now the short term is who attacks who. Matseniko attacks Pian attacks whatever this and J and all this community. Those are the short term, and the thieves there too. In fact, what provoked this appeared like a short term, where an individual who was in prison, incidentally for cattle rustling, came out and found his cows and his wife stolen. So that is the short term. Those are just incidents that triggers off. But the long term is seeing the area productive in terms of water, dams. I think Congress will want to claim that we had provided dams there at some time.
And more, but I'll come to that, yes.
But also in the early 80s, when this problem had already occurred, Congress will agree that it had failed. For your information, the government then had initiated along the tribes militia groups, what you could call like the Arrow group, but militia groups in Teso, in Acholi, in Lango. The Lango one was called Diankalaburu. Diankalaburu means the cow will pass over me when I'm dead. My cow will only jump me when I'm dead. So there was a bulk of militia, but it never solved the problem. To the extent that I was part of NRA, to the extent that by the time NRA crossed Lira, Soroti Lira Road, Lira Kingum Road, the cattle rustling had crossed those roads completely. By the time NRA reached the advanced unit, 11th Battalion of Sefali, 9th of Katabarwa, of Shema, and this 7th of Stanley Mwangi, to follow that road, cattle rustling had literally crossed. And this brings a lot of political implication because in Lango, they seem to think cattle rustling was done by Museveni. But I come from the east. The eastern part was raided during Obote. So the question is now, if you're saying it is Museveni, how comes the part of Lango, which was raided in Obote's regime, with all the militias around, the Ankalaburu, the militias which were recruited and trained, saying, my cows will only jump when I'm dead. It didn't work. And that's why I really thank the president, because recently the president was saying, if you give militias these guns, you are arming the cattle rustlers. Because they come in big number and take all these guns. And that's exactly what happened. So the gunpowder should be removed out of the equation. Karamoro should be made productive. And I think these are all seen in the various development plan that is there, and each national subsequent national budget. It's in there, and it is being operationalized. To what success, that is another debate, but that is a long and a short term for Karamoja.
Thank you very much, Afande Awich Pollar. We are now going to take a brief commercial break, and when we get back, other panelists will dive into the question of the coffee deal and the Karamoja question and see whether we are getting stability for this country. Welcome back from the commercial break. It's been a heated one, but we've been joined by Honorable Rose Obigah. Rose, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yeah, you've been lost from the chat show, and your listeners were beginning to ask us your whereabouts. It's glad to have you back.
Thank you.
And to welcome you back, you will go first and tell us what transpired in the NRM caucus.
Thank you. I'm so happy to join the team. I did not get lost. I remember joining the Friday team.
Yes, the focus on parliament.
That one. I didn't know the difference. I thought now I was moving on well. I'm like to realize. I told you the village in me needs some time really to brush out. Yeah, thank you. I wouldn't say much about what transpired in caucus, but I would say something about the particular items of the economy. Basically, we went to talk about the economy, the rocketing of prices in the market. I did say here that, in Terego, it's an insult. The people are now buying soap at 15,000. I don't have a way to explain them this. So the president is going to look at this together with NRM. We're going to have another caucus and see what can we do as a country. I think it's like diarrhea. When you have diarrhea, you let it clean the system until it's clean, and then it settles. Because when we have inflation, it comes very quickly. It takes time to settle down. But besides that, Parliament has been so much on the bingy coffee deal, that agreement. As a lawyer, I couldn't just rush to caucus, or to Parliament, but I went to attend a meeting with the Committee of Trade to understand what is it, because I would hear it in corridors and from colleagues. It's really a mess. It's annoying. It's an insult to NRM government. You see, at times I'm forced to think we have so many mediocres around us. If not, then we should call them gangsters. If that is still good enough, then this must be planned, people who are planned to rob the country.
The mafia.
The mafia team. Because how do you say this is the kind of agreement these many lawyers in this country can come up with? I remember they put the company secretary to speak on oath. He literally stopped. But before the oath, he was rapping everyone. This shows that we still have people who don't wish well for this country. We have people who are greedy, who are ready to devour the country. It's unfortunate. It is very bad for me, unless this agreement, the nitty-gritties are worked on. It's a bad deal. It's really bad for the country. We are the people who said, yes, let's go for liberalization, commercialization. And how do we just narrow everything to one person? This is not good. It's not fair. Thank you. This is what I can give as a summary.
Ivan, Afanda, which did give a detailed account on interventions in Karamoja. And one question I really want you to help us digest, especially since you part of the young generation that are the majority of this country. The Karamojong pride about being cattle people, and their lives rotate about cattle. But the long-term intervention of government includes, but there are also 2 tribes in Karamoja that whose livelihoods depend on cultivation. So you have the cultivators, but majority are cattle keepers. So when we have a long-term intervention that seems to change the lifestyle, the livelihoods of the people, from cattle keepers to cultivation, are we imposing an alien life on these people? Are we providing avenues that would make them make free choices on what they want to become in the long-term stabilization of Karamoja? Or it's a, you must do this and leave this?
Oh, when we come to the Karamoja question, I don't want to look at it in the view everyone wants to look at it, the symptoms and all that. We have to understand that Karamoja as a region has been demonized for a very long time. In the state structure, Uganda as a country. And you can, this has its roots into the MISCI reports from the colonial government, and that has gone on. And to some point, we were taught in school a very derogatory saying that we shall not wait Karamojongs to develop, which is very derogatory. And to me, Karamoja, in terms of the economic activities, is a true representation of Uganda in a way. And perhaps this region is actually even better endowed in terms of certain resources than other parts of the country. You realize that, tell me where, we clearly know the West is largely cattle keeping, Central is a cultivating society, and we can also trace some that balance the exact Karamoja, talk of the Ankole Karagwe corridor and all that. So to me, Karamoja is not different by far from the rest of Uganda. And in my view, systematically, Karamoja has been made to be that way. And perhaps we should ask ourselves a question. A question is, with all this massive investment year in, year out, even having an independent ministry to date actually, why isn't it that there is no equivalent of how of that we invest? Why is it that we are not making strides towards the an empowered Karamoja? So whoever tilts your livelihood actually wants you not to develop, because it is not only about the economic activities, it also comes with identity. It comes with heritage. And when a person takes away your heritage, which also equally represent your economic stability and economic muscle, they literally do want you to keep you subjugated or in slavery in a way or the other. So, and regardless of what happens, so the history of arming of arms proliferation of arms in Karamoja is historical. But also, let us ask even deeper questions. Today in Karamoja, who owns the resources in Karamoja? Who is actually extracting gold? Because there is a popular saying is that you have to trace where the money is. You have to trace the money. And when you trace the money, you also have to trace the resources from which this money is got. And the instability in Karamoja is organized to remain that way, so that it's exploited the more, it remains like that, and therefore the rooters have their way unhampered. So when you further analyze Karamoja, when it comes to cattle, okay, there is cattle restoring, true. Who owns more cattle in Karamoja now? Of recent, we also heard that some UPDF helicopters patrol to keep the route from being routed. So it is bigger. And when the president says that every Karamojong warrior or Rasora should know that it is dangerous to hold a gun, then it is a statement that is dishonest. It's a statement that perhaps more telling, because they're using the gun instead to say that they are fighting Kasora-soras. And the nature of violence in Karamoja, which actually is disgusting, that is put everywhere. Actually, I call them extrajudicial killings.
And the human rights violations.
It is disgusting. And you see, to me, when you kill a person and label them a Katorasora to the public, to me, thinking critical, I will say, why didn't you disable him so that he can face justice if he is a Katorasora?
Although, Ivan, there's an aspect of where local people are very aggressive.
Very.
Using guns, using local whatever fighting gadgets, and very ruthless. And this problem is not just in Uganda, it manifests itself with the Turkana in Kenya and the Topotha in South Sudan and the group in Ethiopia. So away from our national dimensions, and whereas it's true that there might be human rights violations, because I saw the situations where UPDF made a video of that body, the person they killed, the body, then the skull.
The professional army did that.
Yes, and they were laughing about it, which I think was very unfortunate. But how about the regional dimension, the regional challenges, and the corridor for proliferation of small arms and light weapons?
You see, whereas it is true that some are very aggressive, but also
most of them, the approach,
the
approach to wrestle cattle is an aggressive act, very aggressive act.
Sir, I think my young colleague doesn't know the idea about this. For example, he's talking of disable the wrestle. Really? Do you know, let's put it in the geographical area you know. Do you know that the Karamojong wrestlers can organize themselves like 1,000 armed? They moved from Wakisu district up to Liatonde. And from Liatonde, they start now grabbing all the cows coming. They move straight. How are you going to disable 1,000 people with guns in battalions? You think this is a thief who is passing by in the house? If the president is saying, if you give 50 guns to militia, you are actually giving it to the other Karamojong to come and take it. What are you talking about?
Are you suggesting, Awich, are you suggesting, you're a soldier, are you suggesting, therefore, because this is very scary, are you suggesting now that after 37 years, NRA, which is basically a military regime, has actually failed to contain militarism in Karamoja? Is that what you're saying?
Actually,
no. This is phase 2, by the way. These guns were disarmed later.
Totally.
Then after that, it has re-emerged.
Where did the arms come from?
So there was a disarmament
that ended in 2011.
2011. Yes. That swept the gun. Now the guns have come up. So I want you to understand that the level of the insecurity, the cattle rustling politics, is not as simple. Okay? It's not as simple as you are going to disable a person. No. These guys are organized in units, in platoons, in sections, in battalions.
Okay, let me bring in Joe.
So when you talk of disabling it, get the perspective.
Okay, let me bring in Joe. Joe, this is a historical problem. Whereas the Karamojong used to wrestle cows as part of culture and a show of might, they advanced into hostilities and then got armed, and then now they are actually ruthless and they can be branded as terrorists. If not that we know the historical context. the way they conduct their affairs. And the Gazette of June 1963 carries the statement that Bwowe was alluding to on Dr. Botte's first visit to Karamoja as the post-independence leader. And then when he analyzed the problem, and then he came back and said, we cannot wait for Karamojong to develop. So is this an NRM question, or it's a question that we must deal with as a country, given that it starts in the early 1900?
Yeah, I think it's important you've helped bring the context. And you're absolutely right taking it back to the 60s. But also, I wish you never really answered that very particular question too. But I'll put it this way. That indeed, immediately after independence, recognizing that this was a cultural issue, what UPC government did at the time was to deal with this thing in a holistic way. I think all of us have all of you guys have sort of hinted at it. Diversify the Karamojong economy. My sister has hinted on the question of
what were the interventions then?
Investment in education, the beginning of the opening up of infrastructure, persuading many Karamojong educated. In fact, by Obote too, one of the most influential and powerful ministers in Obote II government was Max Chowdhury, who was Minister for Lands, Minerals and Water Resources. And part of that was the creation and opening up of deeps, meaning that you make life easy for the Karamojong to gain access to water rather than moving from space to space. But while at the same time, you're attempting to diversify the economy. Number three was the question of the Karamojong gold that you're actually talking about. Indeed, actually, part of the big agenda was to create alternative means of livelihood for the Karamojong people, which by and large, Bwowe Ivan has said, what's happening in Bahima and Koli, that these days they own casinos and perhaps aspects of certain banks and institutions. So these things can happen, can be done. By 1984, the cattle rustling had sort of calmed down. And
did you do valid dams?
We did. And that was a very big process. It was actually very successful. Part of the valid dam process was actually one of the reasons why Israel opted to get rid of UPC government by 1969, because we're actually working on a big project for the irrigation of Karamoja, except that our programs did not push their interest, considering the kind of interest discussion we're having. That UPC government has a national interest, has a national strategy that addresses the underlying core issues rather than the interests of a few. So basically, that's in part what happened. The gold in Karamoja issue, you can ask yourself, we got ministers for Karamoja. Mrs. Museveni was a minister there for quite a long time. What did they do? What did they achieve? But very quickly, I also want to say this. As Awich was saying, by 1984, the arms question, which was phase 2 of the 1979 Liberation War, was capsized. It was coming down, except that when the Musevenis and the DPs captured power with the Okielos, the country became ungovernable. Hence, the new emergence of arms. And that these guys got from 1985-86 and the beginning of the rustling process. Number two, Mr. Salim Saleh would possibly know, because he was actually in Moroto. We left from Moroto in 79, 80, this is 81, to join his brother in the bush and many of these things. So there was a deliberate government program and project on this thing. But quickly, I was a witness to the Karamojong of the South in 1986-87, when which you say that this thing is confined to those places. There is evidence that NRA was involved in the rustling of cattle from the north. I passed by Otoboy, saw a big thing. It was an open thing, as I've talked about this thing many times. So there is deals to it. Number four, and very quickly, I have spoken to people in Teso, including Katekwi, and I've spoken to friends in Karamoja, including in some of the other districts I possibly want to mention. There is clear evidence that NRA is actively involved with some of these guys, including group by group, doing businesses on cattle. But what my big worry is, if it is the case that after 37 years, there cannot be a program for protection of a particular area which we know is to be volatile, if there is a case that arms can come from the Sudan to the extent that they're big ugh to make Karamoja ungovernable, then what's the role of NRA? This guy should leave the streets of Kampala and gun. No. This guy should leave the streets of Kampala and gun to defend our territorial integrity, because that's the role of the army. Do you know what one person told me from a beam, 3 weeks ago? That these guys are killing us. Do you know what he said? That had it been that Museveni knew that there are some people who are armed targeting his government, his regime, this thing would be quelled within 1 week. And that's why I'm actually shocked that Awich is saying that we should stand and hang helpless. But finally, we need to be working with the communities in Karamoja. We know that, of course, one is cultural, and also knew that these guys get rather volatile, just like thieves who come to, when they come to break your door, it's a matter of life and death. Granted, but I'm saying that there is something below the pulp taking place in Karamoja about their goals, about their land, and indeed about cattle businesses outside the Karamojong as a culture.
Okay, before I come to
you're letting him off the hook.
No. Let me first ask him question, then you can also add.
But Sarah, I also want to state that the question of guns coming from Sudan is an escape route. Because actually,
I have worked on that zone.
I am not saying they do not come from there, but I'm saying Uganda has a contribution to that route to Karamoja.
Let me ask Joe. Joe, the land ownership or in Karamoja is very interesting. The fertile lands are mainly gazetted for the park, the national park, game reserves and forests. And that is about 65% of land in Karamoja. And then the semi-arid and arid lands are where the people are left to live. But there's also a joke, the latest joke in Kampala is that all the money that has been put for development of Karamoja, especially Valley Dams, that the Valley Dams have remained in Kampala. So what's your take?
Do you want me to say no comment? Because
in part
I'm answering you in that. But no, clearly this is a responsibility of government to be able to deal with these things either legally, culturally, or otherwise. Now, granted, if part of the arid land is arid, as you suggest, I told you that for us, our program was to irrigation and creating of valley dams, that we actually, a program that worked across the country, including Karamoja, except not to the extent to which it was successful elsewhere. And particularly because, as I said, in Karamoja, you're starting from a low ebb. But as I said, you started from a low ebb in 1962 by 1971, and from a low ebb in 1979-80 to where we were in 1984. I fundamentally believe that and it's not about a political point. I'm simply saying that when these things are provided as a leadership question, it works. But final point, how many times has Museveni gone on television and boasted that have the calmed insecurity in Karamoja is a matter of the past?
Did UPC carry out any disarmament exercise?
Yes, we did.
Because, and as I come to Honorable Obigah, I know that under NRM, there was disarmament from 2006, 7 up to 2011, when the guns went silent in Karamoja. But what was surprising is that then we saw the exodus of street children from Karamoja. And I kept asking myself, the guns have gone silent? Why are children running away from Karamoja? And what explains that? And what explains that?
Yeah, thank you. I want to disagree fundamentally with my brother Joe. Joe, before coming to Parliament, I was based in Karamoja. Whatever I went through, no one can go through that. Let's say, for example, yes, NRM wants to rob Karamoja of its resources.
And they took the country in 1987.
Would they want to be in this kind of mess where there are gunshots the whole night? I want to tell you, Karamojongs, there's a saying that once your mother is a thief, you'll grow to be a thief. They just want to rustle. One of my sisters, there was a time when Karamojongs, when they're returning from rustling, any vehicle that is not a bus, the way they rain guns on it, bullets, I
don't dispute that extreme. No.
Yeah, but it's because their history. It's not because this is a creation of NRM.
Just quickly, then that is where we come in as a government as policy.
Yes,
that is when we become big
and
we pay people. Just
Rose is protected. Let her submit.
Yeah, we pay governments, to come with solutions.
That is necessary leadership.
I wish to protect Honorable Rose to make a submission.
Very important
that is
to this.
That
is what NRM does. We always remain disciplined. The problem in Karamoja, we remain calm. The challenge in Karamoja are the Karamojongs. If the leaders came out and said, let's end this, it's like the Congo War. Until when our children from this family would come and stay in the house. When they are going back to the bush, they'll go through the other home, kill people, beat them, take their property. Now the children from that home, when they return to come and check home, say, oh, so-and-so was killed by the rebels like this. Now they know that it was children from this home. When they are going, they come through this. If the leaders could all come down and say, you see, when your house is on fire, you don't wait for your neighbor who is 100 miles to come and put it off. It starts with them. The leadership has not done much because they know the Karamojongs. They know who has a gun. They know who is dangerous in wrestling until when a leader is killed and shot. First of all, you cannot say, go and disarm, as if you are meeting a baby who is just playing with a gun. The guys are terrible.
Says disabled.
How do you disable them? Just like they shoot your skull. They no target. They are not for fun.
Are bullets still being sold in open markets in Karamoja?
Now the government has put it down.
The government has put it down.
Yes, but we are trying to pick all the guns. Yes, previously they were selling it. They're getting. Me, I am very honest. They buy guns from Kenya. You remember this is a corridor that is close to the cattle keeping community of Kenya and this side of Sudan. And basically, you know, it's not an intention of government to keep Karamojongs in a land that is not fertile. Land which is not used and kept in the national park gains fertility. It continues to gain fertility. And that is how you see now the national park looks fertile. The Karamojongs themselves don't want to dig until they were paid money. You pay money for digging, for planting, for harvesting.
Do they have water?
Karamojongs have water, but not as much as needed. There are too many dry wells. The test, you see the water table, as you drill it, it reaches somewhere, it dries. And we have never given up. We are trying to locate sources of water that can be pumped into the town. So many NGOs are there, but it is the leadership to audit. Museveni cannot be everywhere, every corner. You come and audit who is in the kitchen, who is with who in the bedroom. There are some things we, who are Ugandans, in Terego, I don't wait for my chairman to do everything. Every day I wake up with a list of things. That is what it means to be patriotic and to be a Ugandan, to love Uganda. But just to blame, yes. But you can't say the government has done nothing. By the way, in these few days, the tempers, the pressures in Karamoja are cooled. There came a time when I went to Karamoja, I even didn't imagine that the following morning would still get me alive. Especially when I slept in Tapach. You can imagine I would stay 2 months in Tapach. Who can go to Tapach and sleep there? You drive the whole day. The kind of snakes you meet, if you don't break, they are ready. You think it will swallow you with a car. So Karamoja, we all need to join hands. Most importantly, these people who are busy collecting or working in the factories, collecting marble, rubber, gold, these are thugs. They should stop exploiting Karamojongs.
And some of them are protected by the state, including some people from abroad in foreign governments, some of whom we know.
Yeah, thank you. So I would just like to say the issue in Karamoja needs a jointed effort. Everyone in this country should come to the rescue of Karamojongs, and we see what we can do. There is no negotiation with a raider. A raider does not come as a friend. Just comes either to kill you or take the animals, whichever way they find it better. But also, I will not want to exonerate the people who are mining in Karamoja, whether gold, rubber, mention them, a lot, cement, marble. They should start paying the Karamojongs well. How do you collect a full truck, Sino truck, and you pay a Karamojong 100,000, 200,000?
But Honorable, our local content policy provides for royalties. Why are you saying they are not paid? Are the minerals being smuggled out of Karamojong?
Well, how about those who are directly working in the mine sites? Those who are, I'm talking about those miners.
The miners.
Yes.
The local people are employed.
Exactly. The ones who are employed. Because the royalties go to the sub-counties, to the district. It may not go like directly to the individuals, but the miners should be treated well.
But as Parliament, you've also failed to enact the minimum wage bill.
But
So
it
whose
has just
fault
come
is
to
it?
Parliament. You
No,
cannot blame me for
No,
what
no, no.
happened in the Parliament.
I know. I blame you for the crimes of the institution.
Parliament has not committed that crime. We are going to enact those. Today the speaker said we really need to speed up. There are so many bills that remained in the offing, and we're going to pull them out and work on them. But I think the mineral bill was worked on.
The mineral bill was worked on. The local content issues were worked on. What is remaining is what can be paid to a Ugandan by investors, by miners, the minimum wage. And your chairman always insists that the minimum wage bill will scare away investors.
Well, that is not conclusive. Maybe we have another way of putting it better. Just give us time. Once we arrive there, we shall cross the bridge. Thank you.
I will have a last comments on the coffee deal, and we go into the commodities, and they're at the heart of the viewers out there that are paying the highest price. So I don't know who has last comments on the coffee bill. Ivan, as a lawyer, it has come to the notes of Parliament that at the time this MOU was contracted, the company, the Vinci, did not have an investment license and did not qualify in any way to be referred to as an investor in this country. But also the known face so far, Enrica Pinetti, owns 1% of the company. So who are the 99? Are we dealing with ghosts here? Who are the 99% shareholders?
We are not, in our country's history, we are not short of ghosts when it comes to dubious deals. Talk of the junk helicopters, the ghost soldiers. We are not short of ghosts at any point. You remember the agreements with the Uganda Airlines. We are not short of ghosts in one or the other.
Are you saying ghosts as our middle
Are
name?
we ghosts as Ugandans? Or we trade with ghosts?
We trade with ghosts that have godfathers. So, so we trade with ghosts that have godfathers that enjoy the ultimate benefit, the final benefit. So, bottom line, we have thugs in this country.
Maybe also ghost godfathers.
The godfathers are present, but they are in charge of the ghosts.
The ghosts.
Yeah. So we have thugs. I am one of the Ugandans that believes that the lady is just a cover, a face. And surely, when you want to know who the actual thieves are, look at who comes to their defense. When you do a chain link, you know who the thieves are.
Or who drafts the agreements?
Drafting might be there, but those that come in defense of what is indefensible are the ones
Can it lead us to the faces?
can lead us to the
the
faces
ghosts.
of the godfathers of the ghosts.
Okay.
I don't, you know the principle of aid
So,
and abeta.
but generally, to sum this up, is that every country leverages on where it has a competitive advantage. And in our country, by far, coffee over time gave us a competitive advantage.
Shocking. Yeah.
But over the last 36 years or so of the NRA, we have continuously lost that competitive advantage when it comes to coffee. I want to tell you that I am one of the lucky few that has been educated through coffee, and proudly so. My mother, to date, still deals in coffee. And when you look at policies of government, the NRA government, NRMO, and I still insist by that this deal was just the final assault of coffee. Otherwise, they've been assaulting it. To some point, actually, there was a mass mobilization in areas of Masaka that people cut coffee trees and plant vanilla trees and moringa trees.
The way they killed cotton.
Yeah. And vis-a-vis, I want also to put it to a broader country perspective that almost every region had what it produced, and it created a very harmonious and very good balance in what our country would produce. Talk of cotton, talk of sunflower to some point, talk of these cash crops. Every area had what it would produce.
Tobacco in West Nile.
Tobacco in West Nile. But all these things have been, over time, systematically destroyed. And therefore, we are mobilizing ourselves.
Where we means what?
No. We means the sons and daughters of coffee farmers.
Wow.
We are mobilizing ourselves because even when it is going to review, we do not trust them.
Talk to us in UPC because we are lead guys on cooperatives and building these things.
So we do not trust them. We do not trust them. I cannot trust a thief to edit and amend their route. No, it is just a bad deal. Review in its essence is also a bad start. It should not actually be there. Simple. We cannot amend. It is too bad. The spirit is too sickening and rotten that we cannot salvage it, and we cannot allow that to happen. The whole thing cannot work.
Honorable, are you as Parliament able to revoke this license, this MOU?
Well, right now, it's still at committee stage. But I can tell you the spirit is that it's a bad deal.
And should be put away with, not just reviewed.
First, yeah.
Yeah, but
Just
it's
put.
a bad deal. It's really a bad deal. First, this is the same person who has messed up Bwowe. This is the same person.
Thank you for saying that, yes.
And in her hands, Ugandans are dying like nothing. And the reason why the president allowed her to handle Bwowe is because her ideas are always rosy. That you know that we have had heart problems, this and that. We really thought we have Bwowe. But now that you cannot even enter to check what is inside.
If you don't mind, did Museveni know about this coffee deal?
The coffee deal, I said I talk from Parliament. Can we stop at Parliament where...
But you know the spokesperson of Parliament.
But you're an MP, is a chief executive.
In short,
on
what
a
I'm
serious-
saying is she's avoiding commenting on it.
No, but I'm not avoiding. I said it's
Not an authority, maybe, on what the
It's a bad
president
thing.
knows of that.
The committee
Yeah,
is
okay.
looking at it. Maybe whatever they'll come with and put on the plate in Parliament, we'll pick from there.
My last question before I bring Joe in. Are you as Parliament able to close the taps on taxpayers' money by passing a motion that no investor should be allowed to access the coffers of Ugandans?
Well,
Let incentives be there except money. Are you able to take that decision?
why not? So long as it comes to Parliament, it's put on the paper, we discuss, we debate. Moving a motion is not so difficult. That it will guillotine us. I just want the viewers and everyone to give a chance to Parliament to work on this. Because the challenge I'm getting with Ugandans is they conclude before work is done. I remember Human Rights Committee, all the parties coming saying these are toothless dogs. I literally got annoyed and picked my sentence. Before even facing us, they're already abusing us for work which was not completed in the 10th Parliament. You know, once a term of Parliament ends, they can't proceed. Now again, you can't say, start from where they stopped. No, because there are many new MPs. It's a completely new Parliament. But the abuse, the insult is too much. Can we all say, let these people do the work? Maybe you give ideas, give suggestions. But to say we are toothless dogs, these are just people who are there to rubber stamp, eating money. They have already been given money. Which money now? Then they went to Kololo, they were given bags and sacks of money.
Honorable, if I may speak for the citizens, angry citizens out there, you know, 36 years is a long time. These chaps came
And
here when
doing
I
a lot of
was,
work,
when I was a kid in primary 4. But look at me. I am now a doctor. You know, it's a very long time. So we've seen many things. So when there is mistrust and confidence, I take it that we shall use the coffee deal as the litmus test. Are you able to function or not?
Well, there have also been a lot of things which have been done well in the 36 years. If not, the same people would not have given us
No, we are
time.
looking at the work of Parliament.
Yeah, then give us time to review and look at the coffee deal. It is still at
As a litmus test, if you fail it, don't come to us saying we mistrust you.
No, do not only judge us because of one item.
No, it's a litmus test. It's a litmus test, and you are so far doing well. So let's watch whether you can be trusted or not. But that's where Ugandans are coming from, with that background. Joe, if I may bring you in, what are the right procedures of promoting Uganda's produce like coffee, and what are the best measures for value addition to be able to earn a taxpayer higher foreign exchange?
I think those are very important questions. On this very particular issue, I think the context is this. I basically want to repeat what you said. One is that, and I totally agree, and I think you do fantastic work on behalf of the Legislative Assembly. Most of our friends who come here are very good, committed parliamentarians. We know that. The problem is what happened before you guys came in. I think I would just add one thing, that beyond money for investors, so-called investors, the other one should be land. I have gone around the world. I don't know which country gives land allegedly to investors and money.
Come.
It doesn't.
Investors should bring money.
It doesn't happen anywhere.
Investors should bring money into the country. That's why investment improves foreign direct investment. But in our case, fences come here to collect money from poor taxpayers.
Indeed. And I've said that because actually your question is answered by the extent to which many local industries struggle against these so-called investors. I think even you and I have been at a forum in which I think one coffee entrepreneur complained about how little support they get from the structural systems, including the state, meaning indigenous Ugandans, who need to be able to add value to the coffee processing process. You just hear from my good brother, Ivan here, the frustrations from his mother's time. Quite clearly, one, we need to pour a lot more resources to boost agriculture. We need to pour money or put more money into value addition. We need to put more money into innovation. We need to put much more money into training in the various sectors, both agriculture and the rest of the other industrial-related sectors. I really don't know why our educational systems don't have enough capacity to cater for many of these other things. And then finally, I'm actually not quite sure, I'm answering your question in a different way. I'm not quite sure how we have these bangles after bangles with investors, allegedly. I don't know who drafts these contracts. I don't know who reviews these contracts. And in the case of Bwowe and indeed this coffee deal, you and I know that it's very common that big deals have got to be approved by the president. Even me, I have ever been asked by an individual, imagine, if I know how to reach Mr. Museveni in order to clear a particular issue. So these things sort of tend to end up in State House. So what is it that is happening in State House? What is happening with the presidential advisors that we pay so much? What is happening to ministers of state who normally would actually be people, the detailed people about many of these things before, when things come from permanent secretaries? These are the issues. For me, the evidence is this, that this is a state controlled by an individual, and this is a state which is seemingly a state within a state, and this is a state in which I believe is one under capture. And for that reason, I'm not quite sure what institutions work sufficiently enough to address your question.
In the last segment of this chat show, we shall be looking at commodity prices. The liter fuel, petrol, is at 5,400. And the liter of diesel, as per yesterday evening, was at 5,450. Diesel is used a lot in production, in factories, in manufacturing, in all cottage industries that are attempting to put little efforts on value addition, but also for home consumption, the cost of generally cottage industries at the household level, as well as transport for people going to work, transport for traders coming to the market, transport for people bringing produce, the cost of a fuso carrying matoke from Masaka to Kampala, the cost has increased from 750,000 for fuel to 1.5 million. And that has changed the cost of a bunch of matoke from a price of 25,000 to 40,000. The cost of cement for those involved in construction has increased from 25,000 to 45,000. And the cost of soap at 15,000, ranging from 8,000 to 15,000. And cooking oil, the skyrocketing costs. Ugandans no longer enjoy Rolex, their favorite chapati recipe as it's commonly known. What's happening, Mr. Awich Pollar? Is NRM able to mitigate on this skyrocketing cost of living on the part of Ugandans?
Well, I think I have an answer to that, and I'm getting this answer from the explanation that our party chairman gave. I felt I was convinced in what he said, and I feel his explanation has empowered me as a cadre to discuss with you. His explanation is that, especially soap. Soap, he says, it was as a result of reduction in the availability of resources. We were getting the raw materials from Kalangala, the raw material from where it is, from the palm oil. Now these materials were not there, and the explanation of the disappearance was connected to Corona, because everything died in Corona and businesses went down. So when these raw materials disappeared, soap shot up. Now on other goods, it was related to Ukraine-Russia war. When the oil there was tampered with, everything that is related to transport, the global thing shut up. Now, the question now is, what do we do? Some countries would prefer that state intervene and said, okay, you are my citizens, so I intervene by subsidies. Subsidies can be by way of removing
Does
the
that
tax.
assume that the state is artificial to say you are my citizens?
No.
Is it an artificial person?
The state is a body corporate, not body corpus. It's not a biological body. Yeah. So the state could choose, if it tries to play it games like that, to give subsidies by way of reducing taxes. But I agree with the chairman's explanation that should you do that, it has two effects. One, people increase the consumption and finish what you have. Two is that you also seem to have solved the problem, but it is artificial because the price remains the real price, but the state has done it. So you have made an artificial coverage to the citizens. So you wouldn't be honest. So what is happening now is we deal with it by solving the problem from the root, produce the raw materials for the soap. And the minister the other time gave us many areas where they intend to plant. That would appear like a long term though, but it will be sort of like we had a problem with sugar. It appeared like it was a long time, but now we have surplus sugar. There was no sugar, it was in scarcity. So the issue of commodities is caused by both local and international. And I agree that we solve it from the national perspective of producing the raw materials and mitigate what we can. But the one which are international, we shall handle it like the way the other global partners are doing, because it's not only us. That is my view about the commodities, which I buy from my party chairman who explained it. If I didn't package exactly the way he did it, but that is the thematic concern that he said. Therefore, those who thought the state would come in with remedies like removing taxes, no, he said no, and I agree with him. Now, I may not get chance to speak again. I just want to say, when I explained this, or when I say something, and even if I know it is the chairman who says it, I must be convinced, and I'm not talking to the viewers alone, but I must be talking to myself, so that derives me the honesty. Now that brings me to my two brothers here. They made several assertions like this insecurity in Karamoja is managed. Assertions like the guns that come are brought by government from Sudan. Assertions like the Congress man was saying, I saw the cows being raided. You see, if you make an assertion, you should prove it. But to assert that insecurity, say in Karamoja, I think that's doing a disservice. Because you can't prove it. I do not see. I have been an active participant in this thing, not theory. The first NRA battalion which fought Karamojong, you know Katabara from SEMA. Katabara was the CEO. The first battalion that fought Karamojong, I was there. I fought Karamojong in the areas of Kumi. So, really, if we make assertion in some of these national issues, which we are seen by the citizen and the whole world, we should assert with certainty. And we should assert not because we are talking to the camera, but talking to ourselves. You cannot prove at all. And I do not see the need by this government to say we cause insecurity in Karamoja. How do you do it? By distributing guns at night? By going to mobilize people at night, go and fight? How? That kind of assertion really is not called for. To assert insecurity in Karamoja, staged by the state. Really? No. So, the history of cattle rustling is known, and I really wanted, if you look at the geography of Karamoja, it's such a big belt. To move there to Agago, which is in Acholi, to move from that place to Utuke, which is in Elango, or to move to Katekwi, which is in Teso, or to Kapchora, which is in Sebei, those cattle rustlers would have moved like 300 kilometers or 200 kilometers. They move in formations of an army unit. And that's why I'm telling him that somebody who moves from inside Karamoja to Agago or to Utuke, in Acholi, in Alango, in Teso, in Kapchora, has moved distance and is armed and organized. You simply don't disable him.
Thank you very much,
So,
Awich.
I'm really so
think
concerned about assertions that we should make quantified and serious assertions that we can really back it.
yes, thank you very much. But I have a question for you on the commodities. As much as this is a global issue emerging from the disruptions with the international supply chains because of COVID and then the war in Ukraine, we see our neighboring countries making interventions. Kenya has intervened with the fuel dealers to mitigate the cost of the pump prices. Rwanda has intervened with some subsidies. Tanzania is doing the same. Why us? Why do you say that?
I said earlier that it's an option a state
anything.
can take. I said it's an option. You can either choose to mitigate it by subsidies, by removing taxes. Some countries have done it in their jurisdiction, respective jurisdictions. But I'm saying I am buying in the explanation our chairman and the president gave by saying, if you do that, you are doing it artificially. So we are yet to see our colleagues who have done it, the long-term effect.
Kenya
They have done it.
already.
They have stopped already.
Kenya stopped.
So we are yet to
It
see
just chipped in a little and back to
if their approach is good. Time will prove them right. And if our approach is
Honorable
wrong,
Water,
time will prove us right.
you wanted to come in next?
Yes,
if you may come in.
Yes. I do not want to lose this. I think it is escapism to blame what is happening today on the war in Ukraine. But I also think it is escapism to blame it on Corona, as we say, because even in COVID,
What do you what should
I am reducing this point because even in COVID, there was production. Many factories.
How big was the production? You
continue
so
to
many
work.
workers
I am still coming. By the way, the question of inflation in this country.
You are coming, cancel, yes, good.
No, please, let's remain focused.
Consider the substance, not the form.
These NRA guys can sometimes be very indisciplined.
very. The question of inflation we have been with it for a while. And part of it is our indiscipline as a country when it comes to our monetary policy. Part of it is our indiscipline on how we deal with our elections. There is research to show that every after election cycle,
There is inflation.
there is inflation in this country. That is documented, researched, not by me, even by government itself. So the indiscipline that we are experiencing as a country by this NRMO leadership is they don't want to own up. They don't want to own up. We are just immediately from an election. And there is no any other evidence to suggest that the inflation would not go up, because systematically, every after election, we have been seeing rises in commodity prices. And some, to an extent that even some of our currency currently, some coins are useless.
But
at the moment. So what I am saying, what I am putting forward is that whereas there are some contribution by external forces, we should own up here for our own indiscipline when it comes to our monetary policy that has led us to where we are. Thank you.
Honorable, what is the situation in your
Really,
constituency
I would like
as
to
far as the rising commodity prices?
I like to say this to my brother. Yes, we have been for campaigns. It is true. But how much has it contributed to this? Why is it in Rwanda? Why is it in Kenya? Why is it in other countries? Does it mean that we are now campaigning and splashing money in those countries to cause inflation there? You know, there are facts. There are facts. Yes, there was money in the campaigns, but would it have costed us to this level? No. Ugandans are indisciplined. There's too much extravagance. Just one moment. Observe when your friend is wedding. The money, the food is splashed to wastage. Can we
Just
now
like
cut?
the birthday.
Even the birthday, yes. Can we give this thing? Yes, birthday, call it, mention it. The extravagance in this country. When other people are not eating.
By the who paid for that birthday?
Well, are you talking about one birthday or so many birthdays? Even right
Birthdays,
now,
okay,
there's one
birthdays.
going on.
All right, okay.
Okay.
Taxpayers'
money.
So why would we just go for one birthday when we have a million?
All right, yeah.
The extravagance,
Because
the
it involves
greed.
public funds.
You know, once people are greedy, the money they collect out of greed, they splash it out. So Ugandans, can we love each other? How many of us, I wouldn't want an answer out of this, do we try to give something back to the other rural person to empower? How many of us are trying to help the girl child to stand tall and tomorrow do something of our own? Mindset change. You cannot tell me prices are skyrocketing because government is doing nothing. Look at Nakati. People are saying it's because a lot of rent. They are Ugandans. Can you imagine you're a Ugandan, you want your rent to be paid in dollars? Why don't you go and stay in America? What do you want? So you cannot single this out and leave others. That external factors are innocent.
Is that okay? Is that the message that you're
What we are saying is, as a government and as a country, we're not going to leave it at that. We're trying to say, if you used to eat so much and leave an excess on the plate and pour down, can you get that part?
Okay, but what monetary or fiscal measures can we take as a country? Are there any or not?
There are many. Production, we should go in massive production. All of us should start producing as a country. Because it's not only one item that is sending up the price. All of us should go into production. And you know, this thing, you want to produce, you want to use land, people don't want to produce. Have you ever been to a village environment? These days people just come and sit by the roadside. By the way, villages are fed by cities. Now, cassava flour in Terego is more expensive than the one in the city. How do you explain this? Laziness. Can we work hard so that some items, the prices can drop down, and then we use the money which we have to spend so much on this, put it somewhere? Production. All of us, many people think farming is a dirty thing. It's for the poor. No. Everyone should go into farming. We should do mindset change. All of us should be involved in this. Otherwise, my government NRM is doing a lot. And we are committed. We are going to work hard and harder until we come to the end of this work.
Joey, what's your take?
You know, just the other day, I think 2 days ago, NRM met at Kololo, a caucus. I pass there every now and again, and I hope that that meeting was paid for, because I don't know whether that's a public space or not, number one. Number two, who basically pays for
Kololo.
for Kololo?
Kololo
Can
should
you
be
clarify?
public space, but it's under state capture.
And-
Other people other than NRM are not welcome. Yet it's a national
There are some
resource.
things you should enjoy when you're in power.
I hope that is a joke, but it's a very important
But
question.
since when did you request to use the space?
But it's a very important observation I make deliberately, because in part it answers even your own question on the question of national productivity nationally. We cannot be asking people to go and produce more when we are actually discussing Loboa and we're discussing this outrageous coffee deal. And
the capture of Kololo and other
state capture
open
of Kololo and other
spaces.
open spaces, which actually involves trillions of shillings. And if you actually stretch it over merely a 20-year period, not even 36, it's a huge amount of money that will transform Karamoja, transform West Nile, and will transform my Bukedi, which is now the second most deprived, by the way, sub-region in the country. I think that I have to respond briefly to Comrade Awich. Since November 2nd, 1987, when NRA guys came to arrest me innocently at Makerere University, since then until to date, I have been very open, critical, and remain continuously democratic. There is nothing I have said about this NRA regime.
Thanks to NRM.
There's nothing I've said about this NRA regime, which is not proven and factual. And from UPC's point of view, you know what it talks about liars in
But
NRA.
Fanda, which is a human rights lawyer and an international human rights lawyer at that, you know that fundamental rights and freedoms are not granted, not given by the state. We are born with them.
Thank you for protecting me on that.
States can curtail, or some states have curtailed.
And mine was curtailed for 20 years, by the way. Mine was curtailed for 20 years. That's what I'm trying to talk
When
about.
is free, that means it has not been curtailed.
No, I'm just making this seriously. That there is nothing I say which is not considered. I am a UPC leader, and in the event that I'm actually president of this country, I will make sure that some of these other things are
Now,
reviewed,
in this incident of cows being stolen, where was it?
including possibilities that we hold to account people who actually play around with the lives of our people, our cattle, and people who actually play around with the state institutions of state. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is this, that you suggested that we make assertions which are not founded.
Yeah, you said you saw cows.
No,
being
I did.
stolen.
Oh, I did.
Where?
In Otuboa, we saw trays of cattle that had gone to the Karamojong rustled in the south. And it was common knowledge. I know maybe you might have been very busy. This young man would have been much younger.
I remember the days of Kanosemakula. I know he passed on. But there were accusations of him engaging in cattle rustling.
They're on record, including in New Vision, by the way. You would have been...
That is an individual weakness, personal weakness.
Yes.
Attributed to him, not NRM.
So no, on a serious note, just to conclude this, there is nothing, there is nothing I would normally say that is not considered. Obote taught me very well, because he taught me also how liars, particularly in NRA, sometimes make so much lies that they tell the truth only by accident. They tell the truth only by accident. But no, this conversation is about national interest. We talk with evidence. I'm flanked by powerful lawyers. We are actually in very safe spaces. But going forward, I am shocked that you want to suggest that that when we've got crisis of fuel and others and commodities, where Tanzania intervenes, Rwanda intervenes, Kenya intervenes, everybody else intervenes, but that you're content, our decision is to do nothing, and we clap about it. No, subsidy, subsidies are part and parcel of state. And at the end of the day, these are our monies anyway. Governments exist there as big parents to check us and to say, we'll calm you down slowly in little bits. Not necessarily that it becomes a panacea long term, but that's the roles and responsibilities of governments in crisis.
We shall take each 2 minutes to conclude. And Joe, I will start with you right here. 2 minutes. We discussed a range of issues that have influenced the topics of the week. Just conclude in 2 minutes on any issue that you want to conclude with.
I was not a party to the birthday. I was in Agongere local
We are invited. No, I'm not supposed to.
We have not discussed birthday.
No, is it a national issue?
Isn't it?
It is not. It is summarizing.
We are
with it.
discussing national issues.
Is what is going for.
No, so I'm just saying that, look, events did take place in this country in the last several weeks, which are not only of national, but actually of regional importance. Mr. Kagame came to Uganda and came to Uganda in a special way. It is possible that with a visit of the likes of Mr. Kagame and the parties that took place that we suspect are party functions that are funded by the state, when people in Terego can hardly afford a tablet of soap, it means that, we need to review as a peoples our own moral conscience, particular leaders, and those of us in spaces where we can sort of manage to survive, to remember that actually this crisis that we are talking about, the poorest of the poor are continuing to suffer. But I think going forward, I hope that solutions are found for this question in Karamoja. I think I totally agree with my sister Rose that this is not necessarily a politicized issue. Political evidence suggests that actually NRM has failed this far, but there is every room for all of us to come together and find long-term solutions. But I would encourage NRA regime to engage Karamoja leaders that are robustly in conversations, with the leaders who are basically gatekeepers, that these matters can actually be resolved. Because I don't think we want to have the kind of thing which is happening in Karamoja spilling
Thank
over.
you very much, Joe. Ivan, your parting shots?
Thank you so much for today's show. I want to state that everything that happened in that 1 week is a clear manifestation of a country in a leadership crisis. Everything, the impunity, wastage of public resources, a country that seems to be going in no particular direction for the benefit of the ordinary citizens. And it surprises me that citizens like me, whose loyalty to the country I question, can support this, continue defending the invincible, and continue to tout the nation that the country is going in a right direction. Yet actually every sort of evidence says otherwise. About the commodity prices, Ugandans should not be hoodwinked, whereas there is a contribution by some external factors. By far, where we are is a contribution of internal factors that as a result of poor leadership of this beautiful country. And I stand by that, and I am not even shy to say it. And not until we have soberness, because also the decision not to act is a decision to encourage the status quo. For example, fuel prices, I want to give this as a parting shot, as the last one, that we started seeing skyrocketing of fuel prices when we had mess at our borders.
Over COVID testing.
Over COVID testing. And that was not the Ukrainian war.
It had not started.
And actually, by that time, to date,
the prices have not capsized.
They never came down.
They never came down even when the borders opened. And what has government done with the fuel giants? Nothing. So in short, government enjoys that you cannot afford soap. Government enjoys that you're suffering as they organize birthday parties.
Maybe they're just broke,
Afanda, which your parting shot?
My friend with assertions. He asserts that government enjoys when you
They're
don't.
suffering.
And that is broke.
Government enjoys when you don't. He likes assertions. What evidence is there that government is celebrating somewhere and people don't have soap? I have said it about assertion. Now, my view is, one, with security, I have confidence President Museveni doesn't joke. When he says Karamoja will be handled, the insecurity will be sorted out. We are going on. Rwanda, I'm saying, I have been one of those who have been saying there is no cause of conflict between Uganda and Rwanda. I've already stated my historical contribution between Rwanda and Uganda, between Museveni and Kagame. I'm glad I'm having a last laugh that we are now together. How long my laugh will take, I don't know. And I hope it is the last, that I'm laughing at last. Commodities, we have taken on the option of not subsidies. Time will tell us. I'm already told Kenya is reversing. We are yet to see. But I agreed with the chairman or the president's explanation. Mozambique, our historical role is so tight, we should continue to do that. Coffee, we already resolved in Kololo that it will be seen again. So, contrary to my friend, I am thinking that, I am sure that we are in the right hand in the mandate that the people of Uganda has given us up to 2026. We are driving the country in the right direction, and we are executing the mandate democratically handed to us.
Thank you very much, Honorable Rose.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful time to discuss pertinent issues in this country. Also, I want to say that much as my colleagues, a few of them, chosen to talk about the birthday, the first family, these are human beings. Having a party is not the same. And many people having parties, more extravagant parties.
Private parties.
But not at the cost of a taxpayer.
Yeah,
That's the
this
difference.
Is the first family. You don't expect anything better than that. Two, no one is smiling at all about the skyrocketing of prices, commodities in the market. No one in government, no one. Our heads are rolling, saying, what can we do next? That's why I say, can we all go into massive production and help ourselves as a country? To say that other countries are enjoying and celebrating, oh, I think this is not fair. Because Kenya, that went for subsidies, has withdrawn. Because within the shortest time, they were to pay trillions. It was really too much.
Was that from the fuel?
Fuel, yes, fuel. It was too much. Kenya, you know, it's a big country. So
But they took, Honorable, sorry to intervene. Kenya took 3 options on fuel. One was to subsidize the cost of bringing in fuel with the dealers. Another option was to deal with the people who were holding fuel and increasing the prices and cheating citizens.
Yes, I was still coming to that. Those who are taking advantage over consumer ignorance, these are Ugandans. Can we all get to our senses and say, no, these are our fellow countrymen, we should stop cheating them? Because some of the prices of locally produced items that are also shooting up are not called for. Therefore, we are not resting. This, I know, will come down. What I want everyone to do is to give Parliament chance, to give government chance to work on this. But to run and make conclusions that government is smiling and laughing and enjoying suffering of its own citizens is uncalled for. We have just been for campaigns. We made all kinds of promises and pledges, and that's what we are supposed to achieve. We are here to serve the country and serve it correctly. Otherwise, thank you so much for this evening. God bless you.
Thank you very much, our dear panelists. And maybe as a piece of information, cement imported from Pakistan reaches this country and costs 25,000 shillings at the time when the Ukraine war is ongoing. But fuel manufactured here in Uganda is costing cement is costing 45,000 shillings. And I wish to inform our Honorable MP that maybe the MPs need to interact with Kasita and get more up-to-date information on how Ugandans are being exploited using the Ukraine war as a shield. But my concluding remark, Thomas Sankara said that as a nation, people should either choose champagne for a few or clean water for all. We all know the odds we are faced with. We know the teams choosing champagne. But at Civic Space TV, we advocate for clean water for all. See you next week. Thank you.